Good evening, everyone. My name is Seth Nelson. I am President for Students for One Heartland. We are the organization responsible for bringing Journey of Hope to Iowa State tonight. We're really excited to have them here. We've been working for the past semester and a half or so to bring them here. And actually, this past summer, I had the pleasure of working for Camp Heartland as a counselor there. And I can tell you, these kids are amazing / inspirational. So I really hope you enjoyed tonight, and I'm sure you will. But right now, we have a short video about Camp Heartland, which is a sub-program of One Heartland. And all of your speakers tonight have been campers at Camp Heartland. So.
At camp, there are many firsts. Your first time in a canoe, your first swimming lesson, maybe even your first kiss.
A camp where I got kissed by a girl, and it was my first time.
At Camp Heartland, our campers experience all of these, but their firsts may also include the first time they tell a friend that they have HIV, the first time they share with others that their parent died from AIDS, the first time they feel like a normal kid who is not judged by their disease. It is difficult to imagine a group who suffers more than children with HIV and AIDS. They face discrimination, isolation, and stigma. Unfortunately, they often lead sad and lonely lives.
I haven't gone to another camp except for Camp Heartland. I wasn't allowed to go to a school because I have AIDS. The principal said I couldn't go.
Over 33 million people are infected with HIV and AIDS worldwide. Every minute of every day, one child dies from AIDS. Over 40,000 people in the United States contract HIV every year. There are over 10,000 youth living with HIV in the United States.
Hi, my name is Dylan Card, and I'm 15 years old, and I have HIV.
Hello everyone, my name is Latoya. I'm 16 years old and I was born with HIV.
My name is Mark. I'm 25 years old. I was born with a genetic bleeding disorder called hemophilia.
My name is Tyler and I'm 19. I was born with AIDS through my biological mother, and she got it from using drugs.
My name is Caitlin Klepsig. I am from East Helena, Montana. I am 12 years old and HIV positive.
My name's Leslie. I'm 17 years old, and I contracted HIV through birth. A lot of kids that come to camp, they're not public about it. And me and my family chose to be public when I was younger. I have been kicked out of church when I was younger. It was actually on an Easter Sunday. I chose to go to church with my family, and the pastor didn't like it too much and told them that they didn't want us attending the church anymore. But along with that, like I said, camp has definitely brought the positive in my life, and same with my mom. She's my hero. But I want to thank everybody. It's made this happen.
Despite some medical progress, tragically, over 70 Camp Heartland campers have died, including 3 just last year. The oldest, Grant, who was only 27, and the youngest, Jessica, was only 6 years old when she died. There is no cure for HIV. The only cure right now is compassion, education, and friendship. Help us to provide this for our campers. As nearly 90% of these kids live in poverty, all of our programs are provided free of charge. So imagine, after years of secrecy, finally being able to go to the one place on earth where you can speak openly. That place is Camp Heartland.
They can be kids. They're at camp among other kids in the same position, and I've never seen happier kids in my life.
Every year I come here and meet more and more kids and talk to them and get their story. I realize that this really is a place of hope.
It's such a simple thing, to do, and if you can help someone smile, it's such a great honor.
Okay, so now I'd like to introduce who's going to be your main speaker tonight. She works for One Heartland at the main office in Minneapolis. So yeah, I'd like to help me in welcoming Sarah Mullet.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to try this. Seth, thanks so much for allowing us to be here. Students for One Heartland's worked really hard, and I just want to thank everybody who's been a part of that. Thank you so much. And we're so excited to be here. I'm just here as sort of the person who's going to get to introduce you to a lot of my great friends who are going to tell you more about their lives living with HIV and AIDS. The program that you just watched the video about is called Camp Heartland. It's our main program at the organization that I work for and that we're all part of. And that organization is One Heartland. We started as a camp, a one-week camp in the summer about 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago now. And we've grown to a year-round program for children and families living with HIV and AIDS. And we have camps in Minnesota, California, and New York. And we're able to serve almost 1,000 children and families every year. So we've really been able to grow and serve more and more youth with the help, oftentimes, of young people and students who care about this issue. And it's so clear that you guys care here at Iowa State with this whole week of amazing events, and how cool that we get to be a part of it. I can't kind of get over that. It's awesome. I've worked with the organization for about 5 years. I was a college student when I started working with Camp Heartland, and I was really inspired by the organization as a young person, as a college student, because our founder, Neil, was a college student when he started the organization. He was home during the high holidays one year and picked up a newspaper in his hometown in Mequon, Wisconsin, and the newspaper headline said, AIDS hysteria in Mequon, parents are fearing for their children's lives. And he knew a little bit about HIV and AIDS from the work of Ryan White and other advocates who were willing at the time, 15 years ago, to stand up and talk about living with this virus, as my friends are going to be willing to do today. And he knew that there wasn't anything to be afraid of. He knew that the family probably needed more than anything just love and compassion and just someone to reach out a hand. So that's all he did. He picked up the phone. He called and talked to the little boy Niall and his mom Dawn. And through that friendship, when he was able to say, I'm not afraid of you, and in fact, I'm here for you, through that friendship was how Camp Heartland got started. Niall was a little boy who had HIV. His brother was HIV negative, and Niall and his brother both suffered from some pretty serious discrimination based on their virus. They weren't allowed to do things that kids do, like play on sports teams and go to school and just be a normal kid. And Neil saw the need as a young person and talked to a bunch of his young friends and decided that this had to change. And then Camp Heartland was born, and what we try to do at Camp Heartland is provide a safe space for children and families who live with HIV and AIDS, and we allow and encourage conversations to happen about living with the virus or about a family member who might be living with the virus, but it's not mandatory. We really are a camp, just like maybe some of you went to when you were younger, or maybe our counselors at currently. We really feel like our job is to provide a compassionate community for people that are dealing with this virus. And an extension of that is our Journey of Hope program, and that's what we're here to share with you tonight. We feel like we need to continue to reach out to college students to help grow that supportive, compassionate community for young people living with HIV, so that that community can extend beyond just camp. We want that to be everywhere that people that live with HIV go should feel that feeling of safety. And we have a lot of work to do because there's still lots of discrimination and lots of stereotyping that happen for people that live with HIV. But what we're here to try to do tonight is share some of the more personal pieces of the story of HIV and AIDS through the voices of my friends from Camp Heartland, and also talk to you a little bit about how you might get involved to help the cause with our organization specifically. We'll tell you a little bit about how to, if you're interested, become a camp counselor, which Seth was able to do last summer and had a pretty good time, I think. So we'll tell you about that. And then we'll also try to send you home with a few sort of take-home messages that we hope so much that you don't keep a secret. Whatever you hear here tonight and whatever you learn here tonight, we'd like you to share with at least one other person. Don't keep what you hear here tonight a secret. If we can do that, and just that simple thing, then we'll be able to spread our message and hopefully build that larger community outside of camp that's caring and compassionate for people living with HIV and AIDS. So with all of that talk now behind us, I won't make you wait anymore. Let's all of us, though, welcome my 5 buddies up to the stage here, and we'll get started on hearing their stories. Okay, just kidding. I have to talk one more time really quickly, but I'll keep it short. So as you all probably know, getting up in front of people and talking ever is never easy. In fact, every time I do it, I still get just this kind of scared feeling. So I can speak for myself, probably all of you, and I know my friends here, that no matter how brave they seem, it's still a little scary. So anytime you can clap or show your support in any way, we'd love to hear that. So, all right, I want to start our night off with my really good friend Lupe, who lives in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, well, New Hope now, a suburb, just moved, where I live, and I'm lucky enough to get to see her on a pretty regular basis, and she truly is one of the reasons that Camp Heartland has been able to, the volunteers and the staff of Camp Heartland have been able to keep working so hard for our kids. It's because Lupe is a total inspiration. She's been through a lot, and I'm just glad she's here with us today, and I can't wait for you to hear her story, so I'll hand it over. Do you want to stay there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. How's everybody doing tonight? That's good to hear. My name is Lupe, like Sarah said. I'm 23 years old. I'm going to be 24 the 12th, from this Friday to the next Friday. I'm excited. My 24th birthday. I have HIV. Well, actually, it's now AIDS. I wasn't born with it, but I had a blood transfusion after I was born, and that's how I got HIV, from a blood transfusion. My mom, she's Rh negative, so I had to have the transfusion. But after I was born, my mom and my dad decided to move to Mexico, so we went to Mexico, and there I got sick really often. And my parents decided to come back to the United States to get me treated. And when we got here in the hospital, my same doctor told my parents that they were looking for us because the blood that I have gotten was infected with HIV. And my parents didn't know that until we came back. And that was when I was 6 years old. And myself and my sisters, we were told until I was 12. And at that time, I was like, oh, okay, I have HIV, It's just some kind of disease or something. And since age 12, I started going to camp. And in camp, I started learning about HIV and about AIDS. And I started kind of, getting along with myself and getting to meet people with HIV and other people like me. So it wasn't that scary for me like other kids. I got discriminated one time only, and it was kind of weird because this happened a few years past, which you might think, well, nowadays discrimination shouldn't be that much, but if you think about it, it's still high level, and that's why we're here to talk to you guys, so we can stop that discrimination and kids like us, people like us with HIV. And I'm gonna tell you the story at that time. Sarah knows it already. It was I went to Mexico for vacation, and because of HIV, I'm also I have a renal failure. My kidneys don't function, so I have to go to dialysis 3 times a week. And I did the same thing in Mexico, but my doctor from here spoke to the doctor in Mexico, and the doctor in Mexico, his reaction was, well, I don't treat patients like that, meaning that he didn't treat patients with HIV on dialysis. Because if most of you know of dialysis, there's a lot of blood in that, like dialysis, so they were afraid something would happen, or I don't know, the needles or something. But he said, well, just for this time, it will be okay. So I went to the clinic in Mexico, and the nurse, she was dressed up like an astronaut. I mean, like totally, from the cap in her head all the way to her feet, like with the gown, the gloves, the mask, like everything, like if she was going into surgery or something. And I was the only one in the room, just me and her. And I just felt weird because I'm like, okay, do I have some kind of disease I'm going to give to you if you touch me or you're like breathe my air or something? But, I just let her pass for the first day. And the second time I went, I know that in dialysis, once you're in the run, the machine, if you eat something, it makes you nauseous and you literally throw up. So I told my cousin, she was there with me the second day, and I told her to bring me something to eat. And my cousin in Spanish, she goes, you can't eat, you're going to throw up. I'm like, you just go bring me something. And she kind of caught what I was going to do. She started laughing. She's like, you're so mean. I'm like, just go bring me something. So she goes and she brings me a sandwich, and I started eating it, and I started feeling nauseous. So I moved my needles a little bit and where the connection goes, and it started bleeding a little bit. So I'm like, nurse, my arm is bleeding. So she didn't have time to like put her gown or anything on. She was just like literally without gloves or anything. She came close to me, and all of a sudden I threw up on top of her. And I did this like on purpose, literally, just to teach her a lesson that you don't get HIV by a hug, by air, by shaking your hand, or being in the same room. So the third time I went, she was fine. She wasn't wearing anything or anything. And I told her, I'm like, do you want to check yourself yet? And she was kind of embarrassed about it. But yeah, I kind of teach her a lesson right there. And I haven't been discriminated since then or anything, which, I mean, with other people that I know, most of them they've been kicked out of church or out of schools, but I think mine wasn't that bad. And like I've gone like 3 times. I've been really, really like literally like really sick. This last time was just in July that I went to the hospital, an emergency room. I was fine in the room, and then when I woke up, I was in the ICU unit with a bunch of machines on myself. I couldn't move or anything, but I'm here now. Got neuropathy in my feet, but I'm walking better, and I'm able to move, and I'm so glad to be here talking to you guys. And I want to thank you for coming and taking your own time to listen to our stories and help us to achieve our goal of spreading a message that people with HIV, you shouldn't be afraid of us. I mean, we're just normal people like everyone else. So I just want to thank you so much again, and thank you for the students who made this possible. Thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks, Lupe. So, as you can tell, Lupe had her way of spreading the message about how you can and can't get HIV and AIDS. And it's a funny story, but I think, though, it kind of leads us into why we're here. We want people to know how you can and can't get HIV. Our other speakers will talk about it a little more, so you'll hear these kind of main messages a few more times. Lupe and I were just at a school in Minnesota doing a speech 5 times in a row, and I kept saying, this is when you get out your pen and your pencil and you write down what we're saying, but you don't have to do that. But we do want to let you know that there are 4 fluids that transmit HIV and AIDS, and you probably know them already. But the first one is blood, and Lupe was infected with HIV through a blood transfusion when she was a baby. The second is vaginal secretions. The third is breast milk, and the fourth is semen. And those are the only 4 fluids that transmit HIV. There are a few ways that those fluids can get swapped. And again, you'll hear about some of the modes of transmission, we call them, when our speakers continue to tell you their stories. But the first is mother to child, and that includes the birth process as well as breastfeeding, and that includes multiple fluids of the 4 there. And then unprotected sex, as well as sharing needles with an infected person. There is a blood-to-blood mode of transmission, but fortunately for us in our country now, the blood supply is checked, and we don't have to worry about getting HIV from blood that we get if we need it in a medical emergency. There are ways that HIV can be transmitted through open blood-to-blood transmission, like in a really bad car accident or something where there's a lot of blood that's being swapped. It's not something that you have to worry about in what we call casual contact. Casual contact being a normal person, being a student on a college campus, being a friend to someone who has HIV, sharing a drink, a glass of water, or a utensil with someone who has HIV. None of the ways that we would casually live out our lives, doing the normal things, the day-to-day activities that we do, those types of things don't put us at risk at all for HIV and AIDS. And that's why we say, I think Lupe said it, that you can't get HIV from just being a friend or from breathing the air that's in the room with an infected person. There are lots of fluids that don't transmit HIV. Lupe made sure you and her nurse knew that vomit is not one of those fluids. There's other fluids as well, like tears and sweat, urine, things like that, again, potentially tears and sweat you could come into contact just in a casual, playing sports or hanging out with friends at camp, in fact. And we at Camp Heartland make sure that we do have medical staff on site. We have an amazing program that we call Club Meds, which is where we have amazing, wonderful nurses who come and volunteer with us for a week, and they give their time to help us out when we need it medically. And we also have doctors who volunteer their time during the summer as well. And we always have that staff of qualified professionals, but more often than not, we're doing camp just like anybody else is doing camp, the YWCA or the YMCA camps that you might know about. We don't have to worry about major medical emergencies or things like that at camp, but if we did, we'd have some great people on staff who could help us out. What the nurses probably do the best job of doing is helping us remember to use something called universal precautions. And that just includes with anyone that you meet, whether they have HIV or not, or hepatitis or not, or anything that any of us might have in our bodies, that we make sure we don't come into contact with other people's body fluids if we don't have to. So if there is, someone who gets hurt on the playground, we're not, as counselors or as staff or even as friends, other campers at camp, we're not the ones putting the Band-Aid on. And usually people are able to take care of it themselves. And of course, that's why we have our Club Meds, is because they help us out if there were to be something like that goes on. But so just the main thing to remember, and the thing that we'd like you to pass along, are those 4 fluids, the 4 fluids that transmit HIV. And for our intents and purposes, the way that HIV can be stopped is by not having unprotected sex and sharing needles with intravenous drugs. So those are the ways we can actually stop this disease from spreading around the globe. And it is a preventable disease, and it's so sad to know that if everyone just knew those 2 things, and then in other parts of the world, if every mother was able to get tested and know that she had HIV so that she could potentially not transmit it to her child, if those 3 things could happen, HIV could end. We could be the last generation that would ever have to deal with HIV, and know that we have friends and people our own age and people older than us and babies who are dealing with this virus. So, to move along, I have to remember who's next, guys. I think it's Nicholas. I'm so excited actually to introduce you to Nicholas, because he actually was at camp this summer. He lives in Colorado and goes to our California camp on the West Coast. And this summer we had a training for young kids and staff actually as well, who wanted to be a part of the Journey of Hope, this tour that we're doing now. And Nicholas said he would like to be involved, and he actually practiced with us for about a 3-day stint, and we practiced our speeches and we wrote our speeches, and it's a really fun process. And this is his first speech, actually, his first out on the road Journey of Hope speech. So let's welcome him for his very first speech. You want to come to the podium?
Hi, as Sarah said, my name is Nicholas and I'm 9 years old. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and I'm the youngest. I've known that my sister had HIV since I was a baby, but I didn't really understand what it meant. I just knew it was a disease. Then one day, I don't know how or why, but something clicked. I went to bed crying myself to sleep, not knowing if I would see my sister in the morning. 'Cause I loved her, and yeah. couldn't sleep for many months. All I could think about was her dying. And then I went to Camp Heartland. And I learned that she can't die in just one day. I've learned that I can change the world by speaking out about my experiences with HIV. At camp, I've learned that I can have fun and laugh and play knowing that the virus is in my life, that I can still enjoy activities. And thanks to Camp Heartland, I've set a goal to become a scientist and find a cure for HIV. Thank you, Camp Heartland, for helping me find peace in my life.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was a great first job, right? That was so awesome. Thank you so much. So like Nick said, at camp, we really do try to make that safe space for our kids and our counselors as well to talk about HIV, to ask questions. There's never a bad question, as you know, with so many things, but with HIV, there's so much that we still don't know about this virus. And in fact, you'll meet Ray here in a minute, who, as Neil, our founder, likes to always say, is probably one of the people who's lived the longest with HIV in their bodies their whole lives. So I'll let him tell his story in just a few minutes. But one other thing that we really like to, again, let you walk out the door knowing is that that message of getting tested and finding out if you or you know somebody who might need to know where to get tested. What's so great about us being here now is that this week all those options they exist for people, right? I think it's Thursday and Friday. There's free testing. Yep. So if you yourselves don't think that you have put yourself at risk through unprotected sex or shared needles, then it's, again, something that someone that you know or either are close friends with or an acquaintance with might really find useful to know that information. So help us spread the word there. The last thing, and I think the rest of us will probably talk about it a little bit more, is just that message of sort of not stepping away from people who are living with HIV and AIDS. Like Nicholas, it was something that he realized sort of as he was growing up as a young person, that his sister was dealing with this virus, and Carmen's been coming to camp for a long time too, and we love her dearly, but even people who are not living with the virus themselves are dealing with a lot of new emotions and new feelings when they, as a young person or as an adult, find out that someone they love or care about is dealing with HIV and AIDS. And again, if we can help sort of be there for those people, then we've done a lot already. All right, so I'm going to introduce you to Rugby, who is our assistant camp director at camp, and he's going to take us to a whole new level right now. So here he is. Here's Rugby.
I'm going to yell. So, like Sarah said, I'm the assistant camp director and program director at the One Heartland facility in Minnesota. And I'm going to talk about day-to-day stuff that we do at camp, and a little bit about the kids that we have. Usually, kind of, this is actually a very casual thing, so it's going to be very animated now. Every day we wake up bright and early, and the first thing we do is we get up, we get showered, and we get ready to go. And we head up to breakfast, and we're out, ready to go. And what's next, Ray? Singing songs. Singing songs, right? So wait, you guys want to help me out with this? Right? All right, we're going to lead a song. So I would like everybody who's taking notes. Put your stuff down. Get your video cameras. All right, put your paper down and everybody stand up. If you're in, stand up. We're breaking you down. All right. All right, this is called a banana song, all right? And this was introduced to us all by a counselor who actually came from Princeton University. And like Seth is from here at Iowa State, we have counselors from England, Scotland. We have counselors from Arizona, Minnesota, Illinois, California. We have counselors from all over the world, all over the country. This comes to the right time. So this song right here came from an honor student at Princeton University. Okay, we'll sing once, then we're going to do it. Bananas of the world unite! Banana split. Peel, banana, peel, peel, banana, peel, banana, peel, peel, banana. Slice, banana, slice, slice, banana, slice, banana, slice, slice, banana. Mash, bananas, mash, mash, banana. Mash, bananas, mash, mash, banana. Jump, banana, jump, jump, banana. Jump, bananas, jump, jump, banana. Go, bananas, go, go, bananas, go, bananas, go, go, bananas. Okay. All right, so I'm not gonna lie, but there's probably like people around that are doing office work. So, everybody, with us. Bananas of the world, unite! Bananas split. Peel, bananas, peel, peel, bananas, peel, bananas, peel, peel, bananas. Slice, bananas, slice, slice, bananas. Slice, bananas, slice, slice, bananas. Mash, bananas, mash, mash, bananas. Mash, bananas, mash, mash, bananas. Jump, bananas, jump, jump, bananas. Jump, bananas, ready, jump, here it goes! Go! Bananas, go, go, bananas! Go, bananas, go, go, bananas!
Water now. All right.
Do you want this now?
No, he doesn't need it.
Now you need water.
Okay, so. Okay, so you saw the video, you've heard the stories. Some are sad, some are inspirational, some are fun, but you understand we're not all sad. This isn't a camp for sadness. Yes, it might come along with some things, but we're here to take that sadness and throw it out the door and say, welcome to camp. We're here to have a good time. We're here for you. So, man. All right. So I'm going to tell a story. Like Sarah said, we have camps in Minnesota, California, and New York. This summer I was lucky and I got to go to all three. Now, none of these camps are anything the same. Minnesota, it's your woodsy camp. You know, we have 3 lakes. You only know about 2 though. Third one's hidden. We canoe. We can swim in the pool, but not in the lake. Fish. We can do anything we want at this camp in Minnesota because it's very campy. Now, these kids are coming from urban, some urban areas, and like Sarah said, from poverty. So coming here, everybody's the same, and there's deer. Deer is a new thing for some kids. There's trees. You don't see trees all the time. So, California, complete opposite. We're talking about desert. This thing is, we're up. Like, we're actually in Malibu. Pretty sweet. So, we're up in the hills of Malibu, looking over what is by far the most beautiful thing. Ocean. Complete ocean. So, this camp itself is on 5 levels. So, it's tougher for kids to get around. And there was a young lady who ended up turning into a pony. The term I use, Daryl calls it piggybacking. But she, like Daryl, has to use a walker. And so, we're walking along one day. This is a story, let me say this. This is a story about how nothing can hold kids back. So, we're walking down the hill, walking, get to the bottom of the hill. Go to the pool, have an awesome time in the pool. Now, her body had totally relaxed while we were in the pool. She was, just moving around like everybody else, not a problem. So, I'm going to start relaxing, So we get out of the pool, get in the walker, or I'm leaving the walker, walking away from the pool. I go on a little ways. She's with the counselors. I go on a ways, and I start putzing around with this drinking fountain that was broken, just spraying water. And I hear rugby. I turn around real quick. She's face down. The dirt on the ball in the middle. Run back. Pick her up. Brush her off. We said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" She doesn't answer. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" She looks at me. She goes, "What were you doing?" And I was like, thinking about the water fountain was broken. That's more important than me. I'm like, well, you were walking with them. It's not a big deal. I'm sorry. I won't let it happen again. You better not. Walking. We get to where the drinking fountain is. And she stops, dead in her tracks. And she looks at me. And I figured, okay, I better stop or else I'm in trouble. So stop. She looks at this and she looks at me and she says, "You want to stay here with this?" I was like, okay. But okay, now the counselors are laughing. She's laughing. So I go to walk away again. She stays. I'm like, oh no. Yes, and she goes, "Now you're a pony." I was like, oh. walking up 3 hills, stairs, no joke. It was the rest of the week. That was a Saturday. So, camp 7 days, and we had to dance, so it was dancing, but she didn't, in this case, she didn't let the fact that she was a walker going up and down hills hold me down. She was able to take a situation where I felt terrible about and turn it into something that was a joke. I felt terrible. She laughed about it. So. But these kids, they're not, obviously they're facing different things we are. Like Sarah said, maybe they don't have it like a family member does. We have lots of those kids. So they're helping us. They help us out with the situation. One thing that I will say that I learned right away with camp is that you can talk about it. What is it? It says, we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics, but we do talk about sex. So, think about it. So, every week we start off the week with a discussion about HIV, how we can get it, how we can keep from getting it. Usually we turn into some little funny sketch comedy thing. The kids just jumping out of their seats. Ooh, I know this one. Screaming out the answers, and here I am on stage the first week. I'm like, you can't? Really? You do it like that? I'm learning. These kids are teaching me. And going into this, I graduated and got a job, and a week later I moved to Minnesota. And so I'm here, reading through my manual, learning how I can't get it. Every week these kids are teaching me something new about not necessarily it, but how to live with it and how to live successfully with it. These kids are really are amazing. All 3 camps, actually, camping in New York, it was a family camp. And that was the one, I don't know if some people saw it on Extreme Makeover Home Edition. They did a building out in New York. And it's a family camp. It's got a little bit different dynamic, but the kids are the same. Families, when you get a family dynamic in it, it's a whole new spin on things. It's amazing. If you're going to take anything from all this that I just spewed about, these kids are amazing. Nothing holds them back. They can shoot archery, they can shoot a basketball, they can canoe, they can fish. Nothing holds these kids back. When they get in the water, they're the same as anybody else. When they pick up a ball, they're the same as anybody else. We're out in the field acting a fool, playing a game that we like to call pop-go, swinging things around, throwing water balloons, getting all nasty, dirty jello in the hair. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. These kids are amazing. What they go through and what they deal with, we can't possibly fathom. And that's why I'm here. And I will say, coming into this whole thing, I didn't know what to expect. Right out of college, graduated, got this job, came in, fresh guy, not knowing, throw it out the window, folks. It's by far the most amazing thing. These kids are awesome. Thank you.
That was great. I told you, different level, right? Rugby's got tons of energy and is able to lead us through week after week after week of camp and keep our kids excited and keep our staff excited. And he's doing it with 2 or 3 kids on his back the whole time. So we really are able to do what we do because of people like Rugby and hopefully some of you guys. If you'd ever like to be a camp counselor, we'd love to tell you how you can do that. I wanted to just quickly talk for a second. Lupe mentioned before some of the things, as Rugby said, that our kids deal with are things that we maybe can't fathom. But what we want you to leave here knowing is that it doesn't matter because our kids are amazing and they'll figure out a way to have the time of their lives and they'll figure out a way to battle whatever it is, whatever the struggle that's going on in their lives, whether it's about 30% of our children deal with some type of mental illness, about 60% of our kids live with some form of either a foster family or an adopted family or live with a family member. And about 80% of our kids live at or below the poverty line. And none of this stuff matters. It's the ability for people like Rugby who have so much energy and love and compassion, and the ability for people like our kids who are able to come to camp and just be a kid that make this so special. But Lupe did mention some of the things that a person with HIV can deal with. She mentioned neuropathy, which is the nerves. Tell me if I go way off on this, but nerves in usually extremities of your body that can kind of go numb a little bit, and it makes it really hard to walk, makes it really hard to get around. And that can be pretty painful at times. Sometimes that's something that is what we call a side effect of the drugs that are available for people who live with HIV and AIDS. This is huge, the issue of complacency. Although we have drugs that are amazing for people who live with HIV and AIDS, that help people live long and healthy and happy and fun and camp-filled lives, it means that there are sort of trade-offs. And some of those trade-offs are things like neuropathy. Some of those trade-offs are things like nausea every day that you take a pill, or 2 times a day that you take a pill. Lupe, how many pills?
About 16 twice a day.
16 twice a day. And kids at camp, some kids take no pills. They don't have to. The virus in their body hasn't progressed to a point where their doctor feels like it's necessary for them to take a medication. But sometimes people take 16 pills twice a day. And the side effects that can come with those are pretty horrible. And when you do have HIV, although there are these great medications, being on medication once you're on it is an everyday, lifelong, sometimes multiple times a day commitment. And all of us up here, although there are such great treatments, we don't ever want to see another person have to deal with this type of illness and that type of commitment to medicines that literally make you sick and are literally toxic to the organs in our kids' bodies and our adult campers and counselors' bodies as well. And that's huge for us, is making sure that people know that although we're living in a time where there's been so much amazing progress made in the field of HIV and AIDS, that we have to at the same time balance that with the knowledge that even though we're able to improve the quality of life and improve the diagnosis and improve the length and like I said, quality of life, we cannot forget how difficult it is to deal with these types of issues. So that's another take home there. Okay, who's next? Gosh, I can't remember what we're doing. Ray's next. All right. So maybe Ray can tell us a little bit more about that stuff too. As I mentioned before, Ray is one of the people who has lived with HIV his whole life, and he has, how do you even say this? Lived with HIV his whole life, but is probably one of the oldest living people with HIV who were born with it, which is young. We were just talking about how old we both are feeling lately. But AIDS is a really new disease. We've only been around for about 28 years, and we're still learning so much every day. And hopefully someday we'll get to a cure, but right now what we have are these stories, and hopefully you who will spread our messages. So here's Ray to tell you more.
Okay, so I got to follow up rugby, which is no easy task because I don't have near the amount of energy that he does, but I'm going to do my best. So, like Sarah said, my name's Ray. I'm from Chicago, and as of November 11th, I turned 28 years old, and I was born HIV positive. I don't know, for me it just feels weird. I think that, especially watching that video and some of the people that we lost, Grant, who said he was 27 when he passed away, he was a good friend of mine, and every time I watch that video it kind of chokes me up a little bit because in one way he passed away from the same thing that my father did, and he was only 27 years old. My dad, when he passed away, it's coming up soon actually, the anniversary of his death. His birthday was December 12th, but he passed away on December 14th, 1996, about a month or so after my 16th birthday. So just thinking about still being here when I wasn't really given a whole lot of chance, doctors really didn't have a lot of hope for me growing up. When I'll backtrack a little bit and kind of give you a history of how I acquired the disease. I was born with it, but I got it through my mother, who was raped after my older brother was born, and she unknowingly contracted the virus that way. She unknowingly passed it on to my father, and they unknowingly passed it on to me. And in 1985, my parents were diagnosed HIV positive, and my mother asked the doctors, well, should we test the kids? And the doctor said there's no reason to, because if they were HIV positive, they'd be dead already. That was the hope. That's what HIV looked like in the mid-'80s, and it's a sad thing to think about. I mean, because so many people, I remember doing a research project and writing a paper for school about HIV in the media and how it's portrayed, and how many people died and lost their lives in the beginning, and how AIDS and HIV is still portrayed as something that's very different than what it actually is. And it's weird because I think that a lot of times if people were to look at me walking down the street, there's a lot of things they would label me as, but HIV would never be one of them. I've been called the Rasta guy, the rocker guy, the hippie guy, all types of things really, but it's always amusing because HIV is not something that anybody would ever think about, and I guess that's another reason why we speak, because it's important for people to know that HIV is not something that you can see in people. It's a very faceless disease, and Daryl's got the giggles, and that's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing. But HIV is definitely not something that you can see in people, and as you can see in the differences in the people that are up here, it's not something that you can just automatically categorize people as having. And my experience with HIV has been up and down. On my 13th birthday, I was diagnosed with AIDS. So I've been living more than half of my life with an AIDS diagnosis, which some people would consider a very sad thing, but I just look at it as numbers. I've never been a number. I've always been a person. It's not something that's going to really affect me all that much. But I did have a doctor when I was a little after my 14th birthday told me that I only have 3 good years left of life. Doctor was wrong. Like doctors can be. They're human. Doctors work with statistics, and again, I'm not a number. I never have been, and I don't ever plan on being a number. I spent my 16th birthday in a hospital. I spent Thanksgiving in a hospital one year. I've had over 25 pneumonias, and 2 of the worst kind of pneumonias you can get. And the first time I got it, I was given a 75% chance to survive. Second time, I was given a 50% chance to survive. Next time, it'll be 25 and 12.5. And I'm not good at math, so the numbers are just going to keep going down until I decide that it's my time to go, which I kind of decided I'm going to live forever. So I don't know that that's going to work for me. But that's just the outlook that I have, and I think, honestly, it's served me well. For the most part, there was a time when I was going to school and had the roughest time taking medications because I wanted to be like everybody else, and everybody else wasn't taking medication. Like Lupe talked about, the amount of pills you have to take, and to try to hide that from a friend when you go to their house and you want to spend the night at your friend's house. You can't really do that because you have to sneak off to the bathroom to take 12 or 14 pills, and you come back and you feel sick, and you have to make an excuse. Or when friends come over to your house and people are naturally nosy and they go to your medicine cabinets and see all these pills with all these names that I couldn't even pronounce as a kid, and they wonder what that's all about. And it was really hard growing up, and I wanted to be like everybody else so much that I didn't take medication. I refused, and I got sick because of it, and that was my mistake, but I mean, it was part of my learning and growing process. And on my 18th birthday, I told myself I was going to give myself a birthday present. I wasn't taking my medicine on my birthday because I thought I earned that, and I was taking medicine good for probably about 2 years before that, and that one day turned into 3 years of me not taking medication, because I forgot how good it was, how good it felt. I mean, I was nervous because I got so used to taking medication, it became such a routine that it scared me. Because me taking medication was a constant reminder that HIV was there and HIV was inside me and I wasn't getting rid of it. And that scared me, as odd as that sounds, so I stopped taking my medication. And I ended up in the hospital about 4 years ago in really, really bad shape. I was in the hospital for a month, and I couldn't eat for 2.5 weeks, and I lost an extreme amount of weight. Thankfully, I found it all and then some, but it was bad. I was in really bad shape, and my mother and the doctors, I mean, I remember listening to them talk about me like I wasn't in the room. I felt like a ghost, and it was the weirdest thing because for the first time, I think people were really, really worried about losing me. And I knew better, even though I wasn't really... I was coherent, I understood, and I heard everything that was going on. I couldn't really speak, but I understood what was going on, and I understood how everybody else felt, but me being who I am, knew that I was going to be okay. It might take a while this time. It might not be as easy as it has been in the past, but I knew that I was going to be okay. And I'm thankfully I'm here, and I'm still okay. I do get sick, and it does happen, but I was able to be all right. And that was the first huge scare that I had. And people from Camp Heartland came from all places, like all around the country. People drove in to see me. People flew in to see me. All these people that have built this community around me, and they were giving a speech like this in California, and they had a moment of silence for me. And it just speaks to what Camp Heartland does. And I've gotten so much from Camp Heartland, and it's one of the strangest things. It's probably the strangest part of my speech when I say this because people don't really understand, but if I had the chance to not have HIV or AIDS in my personal life, in my body, I wouldn't change it. And I say that because I think everything that we go through in our life makes us who we are. And all things considered, I'm flawed like everybody else is, but I'm pretty happy with who I am. And HIV is also, it's also given me a lot more than it's taken away. I think I've met some of the most amazing people that I'll ever meet in my life because of HIV. These people sitting behind me. Mr. Seth, who was up here earlier, who came to camp, I was the boys unit director this summer, and he was one of my workers, but I never look at it like that. We're all on the same team working for the kids, and it's just, I mean, I always hope that, people understand that, like they talk about the complacency in HIV and the fact that I'm able to be here 28 years later, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy by a long shot, and it's still not easy. I learned to live my life in a bit of discomfort all the time. It's become natural. But at the same time, I've taken 21 of the 26 or so medications available. I've taken medication to the point where I take one dose of medication and I'm doubled over on a couch for 14 hours because I can't move, because it knots your stomach up that much. There's a lot of hope out there, but that doesn't mean that people should be foolish and take themselves for granted because, as cheesy as it sounds, we are the future of this country. We are the ones that are going to be sharing our messages with the world. And for a long time, I was afraid. I have so much admiration, for the people that speak, because for a long time I was a silent voice. I was the one that everybody else was speaking for. They were sharing my message because I wasn't brave enough to share my message. But thankfully, I found my voice, so I get to share other people's messages for the people that are afraid for themselves, that don't feel that they can speak out, because it's still a lot of stigma there. I don't even speak in Chicago because of that fear. I have a niece that I might not ever get to see again if her mother finds out that HIV is in our family. And that's a really sad thing to think about when you have family that would look at you that way. So I think that by you guys letting us come here and share our stories, it's an amazing thing, because you give us a chance to share ourselves with you guys, and hopefully you can take something home with you, whatever the case may be. Like Rugby said, little things, here and there. Whatever you take home, please take it home and share it. Thank you guys so much for listening to me.
Thanks, Ray. Like Ray mentioned, we want to keep spreading these messages because still, even today, only about half of our kids, maybe even a little bit less this past year, feel comfortable being public in any way, shape, or form about their HIV status or the status of HIV within their family. And gosh, we'd love it if people just could feel comfortable enough to talk about something that can be so tough, like living with HIV. There's no other childhood illness that can make someone have to hide in the bathroom to take medicine at a sleepover, that you can't disclose to your friends or your rabbis or your priests or pastors or your teachers or your principals. Ray didn't mention it this time, but he often says that when he was younger and had to deal with being sick and taking meds, that he would tell those close to him that he had cancer. And cancer is a horrible thing to have to deal with, but gosh, how terrible to have to lie or tell an untruth about what type of thing you're dealing with as a person. And Ray, finding his voice, has changed, I think, campus after campus and room after room full of people who really get something out of what he has to say. So I think that we're at our last speaker, Daryl. Daryl usually goes first, so we tried it out to see if he could go last. But Daryl also lives in Minnesota and does an amazing amount of speeches for us. He's one of our youngest and most vocal and most moving advocates. He speaks at our dance marathon every year. He speaks at schools across the country. I've been on many an airplane ride with Daryl, and he's brave and wonderful, and I'll let him tell you the rest of his story. Well, give him a hand as I walk over here. I'm going to sit right beside you. Is that okay?
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm from Owatonna, Minnesota. I'm here to talk to you about my life with HIV and AIDS. At birth, I wasn't very healthy. I was about 3 months old when I started to get very sick. and I wasn't eating. The doctors finally figured out what was wrong with me and told my mom that I was HIV positive. When my grandma questioned the doctor about my life expectancy, the doctor said I wouldn't be 5 years old. The thing is, HIV might be the reason why I can't walk. About the time I turned 1, the doctors further diagnosed me with cerebral palsy, most likely associated with HIV. I don't tell anyone about I don't tell my friends that I have HIV. One of the reasons for secrecy is because I think their parents will overreact and not want their child to be my friend anymore. You don't have to be afraid of getting HIV. There's only 4 bodily fluids that can transmit HIV. First, blood. Second, semen. Third, breast milk. And fourth, vaginal secretions. Those are the only body fluids that you can get HIV and AIDS from, so you can be my friend without getting HIV. Let me tell you more about me and what I can do. Even with HIV, I can do basically everything. Here's what I like to do. I like to ski, sing, and dance. I love swimming, school, and I get really good grades. My favorite subjects are reading and English. I also love going to Camp Heartland in the summer. Thanks to new research and my medications, I will proudly celebrate my 13th birthday on the 19th of January.
Yay!
Proudly.
You will.
I will. I think that the reason I am living on Earth is so I can tell and educate others about HIV and help them open their minds and hearts to others like me. Well, that's my life. Thank you so much, Iowa State University, for having me here.
Good job. That was great. Someone go back on at the end. Okay, so thanks, Daryl, for sharing your story. Let's see. We were just going to do a little audience participation here. Should we do a skit or should we just do a kind of quiz the audience maybe? Okay. All right. So, I have to tell you this because it's funny. Rugby was supposed to bring a pair of underwear with him, and he didn't bring it because we have a funny skit. Can we pretend? We like to do silly things, and a rugby is especially good. But let me tell you a little bit about the message we would have left you with had Rugby wouldn't have forgotten his underwear. So a lot of times when we go, that's okay. When we go and speak at campuses, we like to try to involve the audience in any way that we possibly can, as well as just speaking to you. And so we'll do some skits sometimes. And what we were going to do is sort of paint a picture, I guess, of how sometimes HIV can come back way later in your life. Should you have an experience that might have exposed you to it. And our skit is sort of a funny little skit about, someone as a young person who really likes another young person and has a relationship that they're not really careful about and has unprotected sex, and 10 years down the line finds out that they're starting to feel some symptoms, they're starting to feel not normal, not feeling like a 30-something-year-old person should feel, and only then realizes that they contracted HIV from that one time, sort of being in the moment. And we talk pretty openly about this type of thing at camp because we think it's so important. And the funny part of the skit is that we sort of hold a sheet up and throw a pair of underwear at you, but we're not going to do that. But the important part of it is that those of you, whether we put ourselves at risk for HIV transmission, we should be talking about it more. We should be able to have a discussion about how we can get HIV, how we can keep ourselves protected, and how important it is that we get to be that last generation that has to deal with it. So I know it's not as fun as actually doing it, but so with that said, I think what we'll do, I'll share one more kind of just little visual with you here now, and then we'd really love to open it up to questions for you guys. We'll just get real casual. Anybody who has to leave can, and we'll be up here, and you can ask the speakers questions. You can ask us questions about HIV, living with HIV. You can ask us about the virus itself. We'll try to answer anything that we can for you, and if we can't, we'll make sure you have some resources to get answers to your questions. The last thing I just want to leave you with here, though, is sort of the visual of what Camp Heartland is. It's our little symbol. It's a logo of a hand that's sort of blocking the flame of a candle. And the way that came about is actually way back when we first started Camp Heartland. Rugby mentioned now we have a camp in New York that is specifically for families. The whole family, everybody who's impacted by HIV and the whole family comes together in New York and is able to have a camp experience together, and it's transformational and wonderful. We started out Camp Heartland that way as well, and in Minnesota, and our camp now is just for children. But back when we did have the entire family that came to camp, we would have a sort of a vigil in the evening so that parents could take a microphone and talk a little bit about some of those feelings that they were having. Again, all this stuff is always optional, but it's so nice to be able to sit in a room and talk about this virus that you can't talk about anywhere else. And this was especially true at the beginning of the 90s. And parents were sharing their stories. They were sharing hope. They were sharing fears. They were sharing, unfortunately, a lot of sad stories at that point in time. There weren't the great medicines that we have now. And one parent in particular started talking about, we passed the light to the person who stands up and speaks in the evening when all the kids had gone to bed. And one mom stood up and just started crying and was just so worried and expressed her really deep fears about her son not living to see his 5th birthday. Similar. Daryl had said in his speech that his doctor told him he wouldn't live past 5. And moms and dads are dealing with the fear of knowing that their children may not grow up past 5 or 10 or 15. And the little boy actually heard his mom talking about him. And he came up to her as the heroes that our kids are, and as Rugby tried to express to you, these resilient, amazing kids, and took the candle from her and actually told her and the rest of the parents who were crying and upset and didn't know what to expect, and held this candle in his hand and said, "There's hope for me. Just like this candle can still burn. It's getting shorter, but it's still burning, and there's still light, and there's still hope for me." And it's just been one of those moments that Neil, our founder, and us as counselors and campers have just found to be really what Camp Heartland's all about. It's that feeling of no matter how hard the fight is and no matter how difficult the road looks ahead, that there's hope, and the hope comes from our kids. And so we're so glad that you got to meet some of them tonight and some of our older kids. And we just want to answer your questions. Again, if you are interested at all in becoming a camp counselor, Rugby said he's going to work on getting the application up in about a week or so maybe. Is that too short of a deadline? On our website, oneheartland.org, and you can find out more about becoming a volunteer or a camp counselor. And again, thank you so much to all the students and everyone who helped us get here tonight. Have an amazing World AIDS Week, and thank you so much for letting us speak to you. And we'll be sitting here and just ask us questions if you have them. Thanks so much.